Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing something a little different. We're talking about recalls and TSBs. Generally speaking, recalls are always associated with bad things and that means there's a major problem with your car, but that's not always the case. So let's dive right in. So if you follow our channel, you'll know that we've talked about the Jeep and the 4xe when it comes to recalls. This video isn't going to be specific to the 4xe, so if you're interested about recalls, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of recalls. The reason we're bringing this up is because the NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is pursuing some of the issues that have come up recently with the 4xe. Having said that, watch our other video when it comes to the more specific news that's recently come out with the 4xe Wrangler. Let's talk about recalls and TSBs and why maybe they are actually a good thing. Since the 1960s, NHTSA has enforced recalls. They've always been a thing, and it is the way of keeping the manufacturers transparent, I guess you could say, keeping the manufacturers true and to their customers in safety and other things. If you fast forward from the 1960s all the way to early 2000s, if you remember when there was an issue with the Ford Explorers and the Firestone tires, you know, Firestone's pointing their fingers at Ford, and Ford is pointing their fingers at Firestone. So the NHTSA got involved heavily at this time. It was at this time that some changes were made, and for the better. So there were basically no regulatory changes, to my knowledge, major ones anyway, from the 60s until about that time, and we're going to talk about what changes were made. So under the Clinton administration, in the early 2000s, there was a new act that was passed called the TREAD Act. At this time, it was during the time when these Firestone tires and this Ford Explorer issue was happening. It was causing rollovers, and we had 46 deaths and over 300 accidents. Well, it turns out that NHTSA basically took some heat because they were, you know, the public was saying, hey, you've known about some of these issues and maybe you've turned a blind eye to them, or maybe that some of these issues actually happened in overseas and you know, these tires were happening, and basically the NHTSA was getting criticized for the way it was handled. Whether that was right or wrong, I'm not 100% sure, but there was criticism at this time. So the heat was kind of turned on, and NHTSA said, listen, these manufacturers need to figure out who to blame and figure out what's going on, or we're going to step in. So at this time, the manufacturers are now forced to volunteer recalls when they happen. And sometimes, and that was always the case, but the volunteerism was now stronger. And if the NHTSA steps in before the manufacturer steps in, the fines are pretty hefty. And during the time of this TREAD Act, the fines became even more hefty. So as a consumer, this is really good for us. And a lot of great things actually came out of this act, and some things are now standard on vehicles that weren't standard on vehicles before, and some things that, you know, make the vehicles safer to what we have today. So what came out of this act was TPMS sensors, so tire pressure monitoring systems. So as of, I believe it was 2007, all vehicles produced had to have some type of monitoring system that would detect a low tire with a percentage. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's going to tell you you've got a low tire. This was important because in some of these rollover incidences, they were caused by low tires. Vehicles have to meet certain crash ratings. They have to meet certain rollover ratings. Child seat expectations went up. A lot of things that changed at the time this TREAD Act was put into place. It was definitely fueled by the Ford Explorer and Firestone tire incident that we had out there. So what should you know about recalls? So well, recalls aren't always bad. In fact, there was just a recall on my Ram a few weeks ago about the backup camera not always turning on given a certain incident, and actually it was solved over the air. You know, one thing that many people don't know, we've had a lot of customers and viewers talking about their 4xe and the recalls that the 4xe has, but many people don't know is, you know what the #1 recalled vehicle is right now? It's a Tesla. Now the beauty of Tesla is most all of the recalls are fixed over the air, being most of them can be fixed through software, so that is something new that is kind of in the age we're in. Its software fixes can be a recall. But there are things that are happening during a recall that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but the manufacturers are forced to basically say, hey, we screwed up, we're here to fix it. Because if they don't, the NHTSA is going to step in and the fines are going to be significant. So they encourage or force these manufacturers to be, to be transparent. Some of the biggest recalls that happened that were not transparent or not pushed in by the manufacturer first would be the Takata airbag that you've seen on so many vehicles out there. Also, if you think about the Volkswagen when they had the issue with the diesel motors and they were pushing out, X amount times the emissions that were stated, those recalls were not voluntary recalls, so there were some pretty hefty fines at that time to those manufacturers. So the NHTSA can issue a recall based on reports. Those reports can come from you as a consumer. You can go directly to the NHTSA website and you can enter an issue you've had. And they can be issued from manufacturer giving them information. There's many things that can trigger a recall from the NHTSA. Again, most of the recalls now are volunteer from manufacturer, but if you do have an issue, you can easily go to the NHTSA website, key in your VIN number, and it will tell you. Now, if you're the first owner of the vehicle, you're likely going to get a recall notice because you've been registered. If you're the second, third, fourth, whatever owner of a vehicle, you're going to want to check and make sure your vehicle is not under a recall. Now, by law, if your vehicle is 15 years old or less, the recall should be done under warranty and free of charge. Now, let's not confuse a recall with a TSB, which we're going to talk about in a second. So what is a TSB? A TSB is called a Technical Service Bulletin. And what this is there may be something that is not always necessarily safety related. It could be there's a rattle in a vehicle, or there is something that is a known issue, and when you bring your vehicle in for service, they'll look for a TSB and repair it at a time. You might get a memo in the mail if you're, again, the first owner on a TSB. But generally speaking, TSB is not something that you're going to get a message for and you need to bring the vehicle in immediately. Generally, TSBs are when your vehicle is there for an oil change or for service, they're going to look through your VIN number and they're going to make sure all your TSBs have been updated. Again, now a TSB does not have to fall under warranty. If you're the second or third owner or it's out of mileage or out of date, a TSB repair can actually cost you labor rates. So those are not required to be fixed. Again, generally speaking, a TSB is not something that is going to be a major safety issue, so keep that in mind. That's where the recalls come in, and that's why they allow the recalls to go out to 15 years. So what are your thoughts on recalls? Again, recalls aren't necessarily always a bad thing. With the 4xe, there was a recall for loss of power, and there was a recall about the battery issue that they had where you weren't supposed to be charging it. Yes, the battery issue, the loss of power, not exciting issues. I understand that, but not always are recalls necessarily a bad thing. And the NHTSA steps in, and I think because of this, we've seen some advanced safety technology. Now, some might say some of the safety technology is over the top. If you're a Wrangler owner and you go to open your door while you're trying to back the vehicle out, or most Stellantis vehicles for that matter, it's going to throw the vehicle into park. And, most of us, how we're all guilty, you open the door, you get your foot out, and you're moving for a couple feet, throws the vehicle into park. Again, a safety feature that's been added. So let us know what you think of the recall conversation. Are some of these safety features that were brought to the vehicles good? Are they over the top? And don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.